Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala sayyidina Muhammadin asyrafil anbiya wal mursalin wa ala alihi wasahbihi ajmain. Salam sejahtera and good mornings or good evening depending on where you are. Welcome to Malaysian Higher Education webinar series, The Landscape of Malaysian Higher Education. Thank you so much for investing your time with us on a Monday morning. I hope today event will make your Blue Monday turn into a cheerful Monday. First, let me introduce myself. My name is Zaida Tazeh from UTM. I will be responsible for moderating this webinar today, and I'm glad to welcome all of you in the Facebook and YouTube. As we know, we will be celebrating the Academia Days on the 5th of October 2021 next week. Therefore, today's webinar is so close to every single hearts of academicians in Malaysia. Today, we have amazing speaker on Malaysian Higher Education 4.0 webinar series, The Landscape of Malaysian Higher Education, where we'll be talking about the big trend we need to keep our eyes on that could directly impact our higher education in Malaysia. This webinar is jointly organized by Education and Human Development Cluster, Academy of Professors Malaysia, and Faculty of Social Sciences and Humanities, UTM. Before we start, I would like to invite Dr. Nakib to recite a doa.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Ya Allah, Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim, hanya kepadamu sahaja kami panjatkan kesyukuran atas segala rahmat dan nikmat. Bersempena dengan majlis siri webinar bertajuk The Landscape of Malaysian Higher Education pada hari ini, kami memohon petunjuk, hidayah dan taufik daripadamu. Bukakanlah hati kami, lapangkanlah dada kami supaya kami dapat mengisi ilmu dan pengetahuan yang berguna. Kami berdoa kepadamu, Ya Allah, agar engkau berkati majlis ini dengan limpah rahmatmu. Semoga usaha kami dalam menjayakan majlis ini mendapat keridaan-Mu. Allah maftah alaina hikmataka wa anshur alaina min khazaini rahmatika ya arhamar rahimin. Allahumma ja'al jam'ana hadha jam'an marhuma wa tafarruqana min ba'dihi tafarruqan ma'suma wa la taj'al fina wa la ma'ana shaqiyan wa la mahruma. Rabbana 'alaika tawakkalna wa ilaika anabna wa ilaikal masir. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanah wa fil akhirati hasanatan wa qina 'adzaban nar. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa baraka wa sallam.
Amin amin ya rabbal alamin. Let me introduce a little bit about Academi of Professors Malaysia. Academi of Professors Malaysia, APM, is a think tank that combines expertise and mobilize the strategic thinkings of professors to develop the society. The Academy of Professors is an association which is academic driven, inclusive, include professors from public and private university as well as from various fields of knowledge. Independence without political intervention, equipped with high integrity, authoritative professionals and practicing genuine academic freedom. Thus, the Academy of Professors will serve as an effective check and balance institution for the formulations and implementation of governments and state policy. So with the webinar today, I believe we will talk a lot about Malaysian Higher Education 4.0, the landscape, the future, and the way forward, so that all of us in university, especially in higher institution, will know how do we going to bring our higher ed into the global stage. Next, I would like to invite Professor Dr. Rosna Awang Hashim, Head of Education and Human Development Cluster, Academy of Professors Malaysia, to deliver her welcoming remarks. Professor Rosna, the floor is yours.
Prof. Zaida. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and very good morning. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure today to be invited to say a few words in this webinar organized by the Academy of Professors Malaysia and also the Faculty of Social Sciences and Humanities, UTM. On behalf of the Academy of Professors Malaysia, I would like to also congratulate Prof. Zaida, Chair of the Malaysian Higher Education 4.0 subcluster, and her team for gathering 3 esteemed speakers today to deliberate on the landscape of Malaysian higher education. To all participants today, I trust you'll find this webinar rewarding as you'll find fresh ideas or insight from three respected academics in higher education today. Well, higher education since the Second World War has been an extraordinary growth story, actually, moving from an elite system to a mass or high participation systems due to democratization of higher education. However, the year 2020, that was last year, was going down in the history of mankind as being one of the most challenging years as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. COVID-19 has undeniably changed the education landscape. As colleges and universities prepare for the future, it is very crucial that we develop learning programs that can accommodate students no matter the learning environment. We are in the era of IR 4.0, Industrial Internet of Things, Industry 4.0, smart production. The names may change, but it's always about the seamless connection between the digital and real world. To some of us, the picture of IR 4.0 is quite fuzzy, and it is difficult to accurately predict what lies ahead. Like the Industrial Revolution in the past, the IR 4.0 will create new jobs and will also eliminate some of the existing jobs. Some routine activities might be entirely or partly taken over by machines. Hence, this indicates fewer jobs for entry-level professionals, like basic level medical practitioners, accountants, or junior lawyers. However, we believe that specialist jobs may remain though. Similarly, digital education affects everyone, and it dictates that the aspect of andragogy and pedagogy in education be reformed so as to remain relevant. And the pandemic is intensifying these challenges and creating new ones, in fact. So, ladies and gentlemen, our traditional universities are approaching a crossroads. Do we transform into new kinds of entities? What I can say is that higher education is at an inflection point. The core mission of the university remains. Instruction, research, and service have not changed, nor has the need for advanced education to prepare individuals for a fulfilling life and to drive the knowledge economy. All of us in higher education are contemplating and debating the pandemic-related changes that will likely persist long after the virus subsides. For example, we can see the increase in online courses and degree programs in curriculum that is widely forecast to become a permanent fixture of higher education. So what about us? How will these changes affect academics in Malaysian higher education institutions? Are we ready with the change of technical education content and education in general? Well, across disciplines, new emphasis will have to be given on certain skills, and new contents may have to be added. Therefore, new education programs may have to be developed to meet the changing demands. Also equally important is our students. Students are our main important stakeholders. In order to ensure that we stay relevant to them, our program must prepare them with the fundamental knowledge and skills to survive in the VUCA world. Since COVID-19, Malaysian Movement Restriction Order in March 2020, the higher education sector in Malaysia has changed dramatically. With the distinctive rise in online learning, we are forced to find alternatives to face-to-face instruction. The question is, have we been engaging enough for our stakeholders, our learners, our students? Do they find our teaching stimulating for them to explore the world, to have a new experience? Those are relevant questions that we have to keep in mind. The coming of Gen Z, so-called Generation Z or Gen Z, with advanced digital ability, has posed numerous challenges to academics and instructors. They may speak their own computerized genre that our generation may not completely comprehend. Since remote and online learning are here to stay, there's a need to determine what combination of remote and in-person learning delivers the highest educational quality and equity. As institutions refine this hybrid model, we must remember that we now have a once in a generation chance. I repeat, once in a generation chance to reconfigure our future curriculum and redesign Malaysian landscape for our higher education. So this is a great opportunity for us. Hope we do not miss this one great once in a life chance of opportunity to change what we have done so far. So ladies and gentlemen, this webinar is for us. Listen and take notes on the important insights from the expert. If you have clearer perspectives on our education landscape, that is when inspiration comes in, the moment that makes sense of our profession. Once we understand our roles in relation to the changing landscape of our higher education, then that is the moment when we realize our job as academic become truly meaningful. And now is the time to build on these lessons to reimagine the future. So ladies and gentlemen, I hope you will enjoy this webinar session and join us again in our next webinar organized by Akademi Professor Malaysia. And again, thank you to Professor Zaida and UTM for organizing this session. And I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Rosna, for a warm welcoming remarks to the speakers and all the audience. I think full with messages to all of us in higher ed. Okay, ladies and gentlemen and friends, before we dive into the speaker introduction, I want to take the temperatures of the online room for a while. First of all, please like our Malaysian Higher Education 4.0 Facebook. And next, let me ask few questions to the audience. This is very important questions to all the audience. How many of you, I think, joined this webinar today? You are leaders in higher ed. And how many are you who join us today are lecturers and professors? And how many of you are deputy or assistant registrar in higher ed? And might be also how many of you are first degree and PG student in higher ed? And how many of you might be completely new to Malaysian higher educations and are here to explore latest info on Malaysian higher education 4.0. I believe all of you in the right webinar, and that's awesome. Thank you very much for joining us today. Our goal today is that whatever your roles in higher ed, that you will come away with something, with a new ideas, with a fresh perspective, with a new strategies that you can apply to be more successful in your own institution. So here is the format to give you an ideas what to expect for today. Today's session is being recorded to be available for viewing post-conference. We will take a few moments to briefly introduce all speakers and tell a little bit about their background. Then we will kick off with each of speakers will share their talk on the topic. And then at the end of sessions, we will open up the floor to give you an opportunity to ask questions to the speaker. If you have any question, please use the chat features in the YouTube and Facebook. Sounds good, I believe. And great, let us start with the introductions of the speaker. First of all, may I briefly introduce to you our invited speaker for today's webinar. The first speaker is Associate Professor Dr. Wan Zuhainis Saad. Dr. Wan Zuhainis, can you join me on the stage? How are you, Prof. Wan?
Alhamdulillah, terima kasih. Thank you very much for having me this morning.
Thank you, Prof. Let me introduce a little bit briefly about Prof. Wan Zuhaini Saad. She is the Director of Academic Excellence Division, Departments of Higher Education, Ministry of Higher Education. Associate Professor Dr. Wan Zuhaini Saad was selected as the Teaching Award recipient in the 12th National Academic Award AAN. The National Academic Award AAN is the government highest recognition for the excellence of Malaysian scholar. Congratulations, Prof. Wan.
Thank you.
Next, allow me to introduce our second speaker, Professor T.S. Dr. Haji Muhammad Kamal Haji Harun. Assalamualaikum, Prof. Kamal. How are you?
Waalaikumsalam. I'm fine. Thank you very much for having me this morning.
Great to hear you. Okay.
You.
Professor T.S. Dr. Haji Muhammad Kamal Haji Harun was a former Deputy Vice Chancellor, Academic and International of University Technology Mara. He is now holding on an administration post as the Assistant Vice Chancellor, Continuing and Private Education, UITM. Next, our third speaker is Professor IRTS Dr. Zainuddin Abdul Manan. Assalamualaikum, Prof. Zainuddin.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi. Terima kasih jemput saya.
How are you, Prof?
Okay, Alhamdulillah, good.
Alhamdulillah. Let me introduce a little bit about Prof. Zainuddin Abdul Manan. Professor IRTS Dr. Zainuddin Abdul Manan, aka Prof. Zain Manans, the popular names in UTM, was the founding deans of the UTM Faculty of Chemicals and Energy Engineering and the founding directors of UTM Process System Engineering Center, Prospect. He was a former Deputy Vice Chancellor, Academic and Internationals at UTM. Currently, he has been appointed as the first chairman of Academy of Sciences Malaysia, ASM, and the Committee on Energy. So thank you to all of our speakers. We will be with them soon to hear on their talks on Malaysian Higher Education 4.0. As we know, it's been mentioned by Prof. Rosna Awang, the fourth industrial revolutions has changed the landscape of educational innovations, and IR 4.0 is controlled by artificial intelligence and digital physical frameworks that make human-machine interface more universal. Quick revolutions in innovation has delivered another models of education for the future, which is known as Education 4.0. And to prepare graduates for future lives and work achieved by IR 4.0, where more smart robots will supplant people in certain activity divisions, education should harness on pertinent informations and abilities that couldn't be replaced by robot. Innovation interruptions that produce Education 4.0 that focus on educational developments and skills has made future learning more customized, hyper, intelligent, portable, worldwide, and virtual. Therefore, as Malaysians, we should explore how does the Malaysian higher education landscape will look like in the near futures. So, ladies and gentlemen, please give a big round of applause to Facebook Live to invite our first speaker, Associate Professor Dr. Wan Zuhaini Saad, to deliver her talk on Malaysian higher education landscape, the way forward. Professor Wan, you can take the floor now.
Thank you very much, Prof. Zaida, distinguished speakers, Prof. Kamal, Prof. Zain, and all the Prof. Rosna, and all the participants of this webinar series watching today. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and salam sejahtera. Very good morning. First of all, I would like to thank the organizer, UTM and APM, for having me this morning. I would like to share now my screen. Okay, so I was given the
Prof. Wan, you are muted. Can you unmute your mic? Okay.
okay, sorry, accidentally.
Okay. Okay, Prof. Thank
Okay,
you.
now?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you now. Okay.
Okay. So I'll be sharing with you today the initiatives from the Academic Excellence Division, Department of Higher Education, and the aspiration from the Ministry of Higher Education on the Malaysia higher education landscape, the way forward. And as Prof. Rosna and Prof. Zaida mentioned just now on how this world, we talk about world and how our graduates post-pandemic era. That's why I highlight there on the resilient and change-ready talent. I do believe that the Malaysia higher education landscape is actually to focus on the resilient, to produce a resilient and change-ready talent. At this moment, we have 595 higher education institutions under the Ministry of Higher Education, with 20 public universities, 435 private higher education institutions, 36 polytechnics, 104 community colleges, with a students enrollment of nearly 1.2 million students, and we have currently we have 92,000 of the international students, and of course when we talk about the Malaysian framework or MyHE 4.0, and humanizing higher education, Malaysia Framework 4.0, focusing on the flexible curriculum design and delivery assessment, and this was actually launched in 2018, where fluid and organic curriculum was introduced, and under this framework, research redesigning higher education, learning analytics, fluid and organic curriculum, and innovative learning delivery were the focus for the academic sectors. And when we talk about Framework 4.0, not only on the academic research and innovation, the agile governance, and how we can actually sustain the whole talent planning for humanizing higher education, and focusing on the fluid and organic curriculum. At that time, of course, when we talk about curriculum, is the whole structures of the syllabus, and not only on the delivery together with the delivery and assessment, and it's all about producing future ready graduates in this VUCA world. And in 2018, when this framework was launched, and we were I remember at that time, even MQA also produced a letter, putlining at that time, notification letters, and mentioning about how the higher learning providers can actually offer 30% of the programs in the fluid and organic more approach, where the programs can be flexible and of course non-conventional. It can be in the form of multidisciplinary, based on the industry demand, or with a strategic industry partner, and of course to bring our curriculum structures and syllabus to the internationalization of the program. And when we have all this in place, we need to ensure that our delivery is also aligned with the syllabus that has been designed. So the 21st century pedagogy, pedagogy, pedagogy was introduced. We have also emphasized on the future learning spaces, immersive experiential learning, and we also introduced the alternative assessment. And all those are to actually produce what we call the holistic and entrepreneurial balanced graduate, which is actually the first shift of the Malaysia education blueprint. Lifelong learners with computational thinking and 21st century skill. And from 2018 and 2021, okay, when I actually joined the Ministry of Higher Education at that time, in 2018, we have about, if we talk about the industry mode of program, it has always been 2U to I. And 2U to I, 2 years in the university and 2 years in the industry, is actually done in multiple combinations such as 3U 1I or 2U 1I. And in 2018, we have 33 programs. 2019, 58, and now in 2021, we have 110 2U 2I programs are being offered by the public universities. So if you can see the trend for this number of 2U2I programs offered in the public universities, we can see that the universities are taking the challenge, responded to the part of the fluid and organic curriculum on the industry mode of programs. But this is only one small part of the fluid and organic curriculum. Now, when we talk about industry based programs, we want to explore more what are the other approaches that we can do based on the industry demand. Okay, and of course another type of program is actually transdisciplinary programs. And for a transdisciplinary program, UITM is actually one of the universities who actually took the challenge and offered many transdisciplinary program together with UUM and of course UKM. And we have shared all these achievement, all these approach, and in the one of the seminar that we had in 2019, which is the flexible education seminar. We call it Flex Ed, Imagineering the 21st Century Learning. And during that seminar, we also focus on how we can actually infuse this fluid and organic curriculum in and we want more of these time being offered in the universities, especially on the fourth industrial revolution element that to be integrated in the program. There's hybrid programs, we blended not only learning society. And this is actually the seminar together with MQA, where prior learning for upper A, LC, upper Q. So MOOC was also working on the even from the 2019, we were working on program owners to move away from conventional programs to non-conventional programs, to more flexible programs, flexible education. And but until today, we still hear or we got feedback from the industries, not only industries, even from the associations, from other ministries, other agencies, keep on, saying that how our graduates are not, fulfilling the requirement of the skill that they wanted. Okay, and skill mismatch, low wages, graduates that lack of certain skills and certain skill sets and talent, especially in communication, has been the that have been discussed in many platforms. Okay, this has been discussed in many platforms, and we had the engagement 2020, for example, with the industries, agencies, and also the higher learning institutions through Forces Future Workforce Engagement Series through this department on how we need to bridge this skill gap. So, as I mentioned earlier, from 2018, when we had this Framing Malaysian Higher Education 4.0, and we had this framework of the future ready curriculum, and in 2020, after a series of discussion, and we found that the main focus should be to the curriculum itself. Okay, that's why in 2020 we design, or we improve the framework so that the fluid and organic curriculum structure will be the basis or the foundation that holds the framework, the future ready curriculum framework. Okay, to produce the lifelong learners, 21st century skills, students with design thinking, and of course the holistic entrepreneurial balance. And for the past 3 years, in my division, for example, we receive all applications, okay, for new programs, and also those review of the current programs. And I think to guide the program owners, to guide the universities on how to produce more flexible and relevant programs. Okay, so we focus on the fluid and organic curriculum structure, and we deep dive into it, and we produce what we call this experiential learning and competency-based education landscape, Excel. Now, this framework, what we call Excel, spatial learning and competency-based education landscape, actually triggered after these 3 years of looking at the programs and engaging with the industries, engaging with other agencies and stakeholders, and of course the experts from the universities and agencies and industries. And it has actually triggered us to come up with this framework on how to redesign our programs by integrating the elements of industry, research, community, and personalized program to produce resilient and change-ready talents. I do actually strongly believe that the students have experiential learning. I think I mentioned it in many webinars and many platforms on how the importance to give this experiential learning to our students, to provide this experiential learning to our students, and at the same time to assess the students based on their competency and not based on their just academic performance, and to also include the 10 C's, the 10 communication skill, critical thinking, creative and innovative entrepreneurial skills, computational thinking and ICT literacy, complex problem solving, collaboration and leadership skill, cognitive and affective flexibility, cross-cultural and global learning skills. Because of this pandemic, we should be we are engaging people seamlessly, right? So cross-cultural and global learning skills, career and learning self-reliance, coping and well-being skills. Okay, all these, what we call the 10 C's communication in Excel, are very are important, that we want each and everybody to emphasize on this when actually they design their programs. Now, why experiential learning and competency-based education? Based on our studies, also we have found that how this competence-based education can actually help the nation not only to recover from this pandemic, but how to live, okay, how to make that transformation to living with COVID, okay, because the world, we do not know when actually this COVID-19 will be over, and we are now even working on how to live with COVID-19 as an endemic. And hybrid campus is actually the way forward on the shift that we need to do post-COVID. And the goals, okay, for this experiential learning and competency-based education is to transform based on the Excel framework, and of course to produce the resilient and change-ready talent. Now, I would like to share very briefly on what are the four thrusts that we have in Excel, and the details of the framework will soon, within these 2 weeks, will be launched by the Ministry of Higher Education. And first is actually on the industry-driven experiential learning, what we call IDEAL, and as I mentioned earlier, we have 2U2I, but now we want to not only to have a 2U2I approach, but we want to have more work-based learning, a more industry-infused approach in the program, so that the students will have the immersive industrial experience as early as possible, early semesters, through, for example, like co-op education and apprenticeship program. Currently, we have what we call the structured industry attachment, structured industry apprenticeship program, or SIAP, together we work together with MIMOS and MITI, for example. That is for the electrical and electronic programs under the integrated circuit design. So, but we want to have more of this SIAP program, and also we want our students to have training in the industry as early as possible through apprenticeship program. We have two universities, USIM and UNIZOR, who are actually offering the co-op and also apprenticeship mode of program. So this will have actually through this ideal, we know that the students are job ready and they will have the work-based learning skills, okay, and also to be able to familiarize with the real work environment. And the next one is care. I remember when we had this engagement with the universities. Before this, okay, we have Sulam, right? And now you have care. So why do we have so many framework? So it's not about just having that community-based learning through one course, but we want our students to have the engagement and internalization through community-based learning, where they have they will spend more time with the community, trying to solve their problems, and also at the same time working together with the community to learn from the community itself. So instead of having one course, like you're going to have one course within 4 years, one engagement with the community, through community resilient experiential learning, students will be able to apply their knowledge and learn with the community as early as possible. And at the same time, when you look at care, right, you should imagine how the students, what students can learn through the community engagement, through the research that they do with the community. So this care, the approach should be more transdisciplinary programs, okay, transdisciplinary program with the embedment of also research and the collaboration with the industry. So the impact of this care to the students will not only to the community but also the social innovations, the skills that they can that can be instilled through this care, like empathy, negotiation skill, science making, for example, right? And through research infused experiential learning, the 4 approaches: research immersion, apprentice, practitioner, and research mentor. Actually, for real, there are actually the spectrum of the research that is infused in real. There are 7 spectrum, and the most basic level that the universities are doing now is actually having the final year project with the industry, and of course by relating the projects and problems with the real life situation, with a real problem from the industry. That is the basic approach. But we want the students to be able to have that analytical thinking skill, right? Critical thinking, problem solving, which actually equip our graduates to have the necessary skills to meet the future workforce, and they are job ready at the same time. And lastly, the on poise, personalized experiential learning. Through our engagement, the students engagement excel. Actually, students were very excited, and they were 100% actually agreed on this personalized experiential learning approach, where students can actually choose their programs based on their passion and interests, and they can the flexibility that are provided through this poise will actually accommodate them in their career needs. And these poise, we are expecting students to become decision makers, lifelong learners. They are market-driven, they're versatile and adaptive. And of course, not only just through this academic program, we would also want to focus on research that give impact to the community. Recently, USM, for example, has been is in the top 10 the impact rankings 2021 for peace, justice, and strong institutions. IIUM, for example, has been awarded with this Green Gown Awards, Sustainable Institution of the Year. And I would like to share this, because I think it's very important that for our universities to explore research that actually give impact to the community. And of course, way forward for our higher education landscape is all about digitalization, and through the shift 9 of globalized online learning, because before this we were talking about MOOCs and only MOOCs, and now and blended learning, but now through my digital blueprint, my digital economy blueprint, not only we want to focus on MOOC and blended learning or blended learning substitution. We need to have that digital talent, because it's not just about digitization or digitalization. We want to have that digital transformation, and it's not just a simple automation or transforming the analog to the digital form, but it take a series of deep and coordinated culture and workforce and technology shifts that enable the institution to transform, not only to transform the mindset and also the strategic directions of the whole institution. And when we talk about digital transformation, it's not just about the curriculum and the program and the content or the learning management system. It's the whole the governance structures, the infra and infrastructures, of course curriculum, content, pedagogy, but also the research and innovation and the inculturation. Okay, so the whole components in this digital transformation, collaborative work and partnership. And right now, if you notice or not, for the past 3 semesters, most of the 70% of the courses are being offered actually 100% online. And we had webinars, a few series of webinars, 4 or 5 series of webinars with MQA together on how actually transform our current programs and current delivery approach from physical to fully online, using through open and distance learning. Okay, so this webinar actually help to provide guidance to our educators on to properly deliver online learning and how to engage our students, especially to ensure that the online learning is meaningful and more structured. And of course, through the Educator at VLE program, also we work together with MITI to train about 500 of our educators on how to produce digital content. And this is actually under Industry Forward. And research on online learning quality in Malaysian Higher Education institutions during COVID-19 also has been carried out, and we will produce a white paper very soon this year on these findings. And even recently, our minister also has shared some of the early findings where students after 3 semesters, okay, although that's why when we had that webinar, actually we want to train our educators on how to produce a sim, for example, okay, to manage the assignments and projects that and assessment on to using online learning. But at the same time, way forward, okay, in our higher learning institution landscape, okay, higher education landscape, when we have announced that the campus will be opening in this starting 15 October, right? And there will be a shift now where some of the students might not be able to come back as early as others, right? And the approach will be in the form of hybrid. Okay, the teaching and learning will be conducted in the hybrid mode. So, of course, as far as I know, none of the universities actually will have this type of video wall. Maybe I'm not sure. Maybe UTM is actually having this what we call the smart classroom with this video wall, but hybrid campus or the approach what we call the high flex learning, okay, high flex learning, hybrid and flexible is actually the way forward. Now, although we don't have this video wall and all, but our lecturers they're all very creative and innovative. We use whatever that we have in our classroom to conduct a synchronous learning or hybrid learning with our students wherever they are, and also together those students are coming back to the campus. So although we will be having our students back to campus very soon, but we still have to follow the SOPs, and we need to ensure that the safety and the safety of our students, not only our students, or to all our staff and lecturers in the campus. So our way forward is on high flex learning, and of course, the lecturers' competence in having in using this high flex learning. We also want to assist, okay, to facilitate our lecturers. What we call this MyHE innovative digital educators initiative, and through the MyHE immersive learning spaces also, right? Okay, so these are some of the examples of current initiatives, right? So we have all these initiatives. We have even recently introduced the Cruise Integrity and Rasuah (KIAR). We are launching very soon our this Excel. That will be the next launching, and we will be having our Forces Future Engagement Series of Future Workforce Engagement Series event, and there are many that all are actually in place, and not only in place, there are many that they are ongoing, that have been organized, and through our partners. For example, very strong partners will be through MEPTA, Magnetics, MQA, MDEC, and TENCOP. And now we are working with the Commonwealth of Learning to train our lecturers on the tech-enabled learning. So, and we are also working on the micro-credential or M-credible micro-credential based learning that we want to emphasize on how the because of the flexibility that we want to we want to ensure that these opportunities are given to our students. And these are some of the books that we have actually and we have produced and we are going to produce. So we hope through all these initiatives in place, and we are ongoing way forward, we want this we will be able to reduce the skill gap, reduce the skill mismatch, and through our initiatives in memasyarakatkan universities, okay, promote values and empathy that give impact to not only to the society but also to the socio-economy and nation prosperity, and of course again on the to provide the flexibility and choice. And not only that we want to reimagine education, but we want to reimagineering. We want to imagine and engineer. We want to imagine and do. And we always think that this disruption, we call it this because of this pandemic, is maybe a disruption of in education, but the coming age of generation, we will be the biggest driving force for change in the education system. And I can assure, I hope, with all our efforts, that this will be a change for the better. So with that, I would like to thank you very much. And Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much for interesting talk, Prof. Wan. I believe I jot down some of the initiative. There are so many initiatives. I think a very great, excellent initiative has been set up by Ministry of Higher Education. I believe we in the higher ed should grab this opportunity, because we can see that the effort has been put in a very excellent platforms by the Ministry of Higher Education. Well, of course, some of the questions that might be came in our mind before we attend this webinar has been answered by some of the slide from Wan. Of course, our audience in Facebook, YouTube also still have questions from Wan to ask. Okay, let us see the first question that posted, I think, in the Facebook. Okay, let me read it. Charles Stewart's University launch more drastic approach in engineering program with similarity to 2U2I, which is 1U4I. How are initial response from Malaysia universities on the 2U2I concept? If Prof. Wan can actually share some of the response from the university on 2U2I concept.
Okay, 1U4I, how are the initial response, okay, from Malaysia? Well, I really hope that any of the Malaysian university will be able to do this 1U4I, but for the record, we do not actually have any engineering program yet, okay, pure engineering program that offering in the form of 2U2I or 3U1I. I'm still waiting actually for any of the engineering program to take this challenge. Of course, when we actually engage the board of engineers or EACs, ETAC, they are supporting. Okay, they are actually supporting the approach in having this 2U2I in engineering program. And I'm looking forward to have this program be offered by any of the Malaysian universities.
Okay, I think the signal is clear. Our colleagues from engineering faculty and colleges and Ministry of Higher Education is waiting for 2U2I program for our engineering colleagues. Prof Wan, insyaAllah. I believe they are in the process of designing the 2U2I because in
Yep.
UTM also we have
Or
in
just remote,
computer
yeah.
science. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, another question is that great knowledge sharing from Dr. Wan. Does the transformation program include pre-K learning too, as they are the foundations of our education structure? I think it's a pre-knowledge, if I'm not mistaken, the pre-knowledge learners, or what do the audience mean it by pre-K? Prof Wan, you muted, I think.
Yeah.
Accidentally.
Does the transformation program include pre-K learners? I think this one maybe for the schools, I think.
I think, yeah.
Perhaps. Yeah. Yeah. I think of course it is important that the transformation starts from a
It's a preschool, Prof. It's,
kindergarten
for one, it's a preschool.
towards preschool.
Preschool.
That one is actually under different ministry. But having said that, through this transformation, we hope that it's not too late to prepare our students, although they are actually like K to 12.
Okay. We having a problems a little bit on the line of Prof Wan, but if I can chip in on the preschools, I believe although our education in Malaysia is under two ministry, but from the Ministry of Education you can see there are so many excellent initiatives that have been set up by the Ministry of Education, and this is actually the transformation from two ministry, from the school levels to the higher ed, because we're having a problem with the line of Prof Wan for a while. So I'm not sure whether it will be Prof Wan back with us or not. Okay, Prof Wan. Okay, thank you, Prof Wan. Can we have the last question from Prof Wan? Yeah, Prof. Yeah. Is there any other questions? Yeah, why too many program created? I believe might be this audience is asking about there are too many initiative, like for example, 2U2R, transdisciplinary program, Excel, CRES, Ideal. So this is where I think Mr. Mahadirin asking why too many program created under the Ministry of Higher Education. If one can actually respond to it. We lost the connection back. But I believe to all the audience, if you look at the last slide that explained by Prof Wan, that is the purpose of having, I think, quite numbers of initiative, because each initiative will actually deal with the different gaps, I believe. Prof Wan, we're having a problems that we can't hear you. I believe this question can be answered by your last slide, that you keep actually showing us to close the gap in any areas that we have in higher ed. Okay, so thank you very much, I think, for Assistant Professor Dr. Wan Zuhaini Saad for deliver his talk. I believe it's a fresh from the oven informations. There is the way forwards to our colleagues and friends, including me, myself. We have to know that Ministry of Higher Education is planning to go for hybrid campus, high flex learning, which is actually between face-to-face and flexibility learning. There are so many initiatives, and is challenges to us to make sure that our curriculum, that's a very important factor, the flexible curriculums, to cope with all the initiatives that been planned by Ministry of Higher Education to prepare our graduates for future ready graduates. Okay, then of course we will go for the next speaker. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, I think we will welcome Our next speaker, Professor TS, Dr. Haji Muhammad Kamal Haji Harun. He will share on UITM perspective, looking at the higher education in the era of IR 4.0. Prof. Haji Muhammad Kamal, can you join me on the stage to share your thought on UITM perspective? So Professor Kamal, without further ado, you can take the online floor now.
Thank you very much, Professor Dr. Zaida, my fellow friends, Professor Dr. Associate Professor Dr. Wan Zuhainis, as well as Professor Dr. Zainuddin, who happens to be speaking in our webinar today, and of course, Professor Rosna, who's leading this program under the Akademi Professor Malaysia. I would like to take this opportunity to wish good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are, and Assalamu alaikum to all, and also the opportunity to speak in this webinar. So thank you very much to the organizer, Akademi Professor Malaysia, as well as UTM. Now, I'll be dwelling on a subject that is very much related to what has been shared by Dr. Zuhainis. Let me try to put this on the screen. Are you able to see it?
We're still waiting from the screen.
Yeah.
You have it, okay.
Okay. Are you able to see it now?
Yeah. Yes, we can see from.
Okay.
Nice and clear.
Thank you very much. Okay. Let me check if it is moving. Can it move now? Yeah.
It's moving. Okay. Okay.
All right, great. Okay. Now, I would like to give some feedbacks on how UITM responded to the need of change, particularly induced by the IR 4.0 in our education system. I took this picture from the Google actually, and I kind of like this picture because it really shows us the collaborative effort among individuals who try to reach to the top. And I think that is really what education should instill, particularly higher education. Now, another thing that I would like to share. I always put up this cartoon drawing in all my talks because it really gives a lot of meaning to me. And if I could just share with you, this is by Jamie Chatteris, who talks about graduate actually. And he said, first day of work, your first job is to sweep the floor. And the response came, but I am a graduate. And the boss went and said, oh, sorry, I didn't realize. Give me the broom and I'll show you how. So, I mean, you can interpret it in many ways, but the way I look at it is, this is very important to me because it says about the kind of graduates that we produce from our university. Are we producing someone who became arrogant because he gets a piece of paper from the university, which he used to convince people that he has brain? Or are we producing someone who are humbled by the knowledge, intellectuality, and rationale we instill into themselves so that they will do things out of moral responsibility as well as accountability? Now, this answers a lot to me, or rather this defines the direction that we intend to move on with all the human resource that goes through our higher education system to move the country forward. So that is the reason why I love to share this cartoon. Anyway, I will organize my talk in the following manner. I would like to dwell a little bit about defining the meaning of education. We'll talk about knowledge and education. In fact, I wish to dwell a bit on the meaning of higher education, the concept of universities education, before embarking on the subject of the fourth industrial revolution and how these elements actually shape our formulation towards handling, or rather tackling, the issues of higher education in the era of IR 4.0. So now when we talk about the meaning of education, I would like to start with man first, the definition of, or rather the purpose of man, and the fitrah of a human. And this is what we learn from the, from our experience. And of course, it's being stated by Al-Quran in Surah Al-Baqarah. We realize that man is actually a learning being. Man is able to learn knowledge, acquire power of language to communicate, and develop intellectuality, or sometimes defined as akal. On top of that, man is a moral being. They are able to make the right choices and thus decision, and this must be guided by certain rules. And more often than not, we want it to be guided by right and moral values in order to do the right things. And Surah Al-Baqarah ayat 30 is clearly defined the role of man. That is to be the vicegerent of God on earth. And what do we mean by vicegerent? It is one who exercises the delegated powers on behalf of the supreme authority. Man is just not the master. He can't just be doing anything he likes on earth, but he's the God's deputy, and does not possess any powers on his own except those that which are delegated to him by the real master, the God. Okay, and as such, man is entrusted with amanah, with the responsibility to rule according God's will, and the purpose, and his pleasure. And this is as defined by Professor Syed Muhammad Nakib Alatas and Professor Dr. Wan Muhammad Noor and Wan Daud. So if you look from this particular function of man to be vicegerent or Khalifa, so man has got the duty to prosper the earth, to look at, to conserve, and to make to create a better future on earth. And obviously, man must have knowledge, must be able to develop the intellectuality in him, and on top of that, must be able to define what is the right and what is the wrong thing to do. And the choices and decisions made by man, therefore, should be guided by certain principles. So, having that as a framework of thinking on the function of man, I put it out that man has a purpose of performing the duty of a vicegerent on earth in accordance with the laws and values as defined by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that this leadership is never about title, not about position. It's never about power or stature or even reward. It is all about the duty to be carried out with responsibility, which is amanah, and accountability. It is about fulfilling the command of God, that is to perfect all human society and to perfect the physical world of space and time. It is about a duty that should be guided by knowledge, intellectuality, and morality. It is driven by our core beliefs, that is shaped by the knowledge, values, and intellect that we develop. We must have the clarity of purpose on the knowledge that we learn and the intellect that we develop, and we should be guided by our qalb, or the clean heart, or the right values. So along the line of this principle, I go on trying to make sense of what is the meaning of education, and a lot of my studies or readings. These are some of the key issues that should be highlighted in education. That is, education is not limited to training the mind and feelings with information, but rather it involves all aspects, intellectual, religious, moral, and physical, of the personality of the learner. It is not enough to impart the theoretical learning. That learning must be put into practice. True learning is that which affects behavior, and whereby the learner makes principal use of his knowledge. So this is taken from Kitab Ihya Ulumuddin, volume 3, from page 61 to 62. Now, I further study what is actually the meaning of education, and here's some of the knowledge, or rather some of the information that I got. It is about developing the akal, or the reason, intellect, and the rational. Now, akal is applied to man's knowledge of the true nature of things, and also to his power to perceive and know. This is as defined by Imam Ghazali, and that the akal means reason, rational, intellect, or intelligence, the antonym of which is merely stupidity or foolishness. This is defined as Dr. Yusuf Dalhat. And according to Professor Syed Muhammad Nakib Alatas, birational means man's capacity for understanding speech and the power responsible for the formulation of meaning, which involve judgment, discrimination, distinction, and clarification, and which has to do with the articulation of words or expression in a meaningful pattern. So this is what education should be focusing on: developing akal, developing the capability of reasoning, rational and intellect, and also the communication that brings up real meaning to what need to be conveyed. Noam Chomsky, Professor Noam Chomsky, a renowned American philosopher, put up the following to define the meaning of education: that a true education, he suggested, opens a door to human intellectual freedom and creative autonomy. He argued that it is not important what we cover in the class, actually, but what's more important is what we discover in the class. According to him, to be truly educated means to be resourceful, to be able to formulate serious questions and question standard doctrine if that's appropriate. And to be truly educated means to be in the position to inquire and to create on the basis of the resources available to the student, which the student come to appreciate and comprehend. And finally, he said, it is the learner who's going to achieve the course of education. The responsibility of learning is actually up to the learner. It's up to the learner to define what matters, where do you want to go with this knowledge, and how you're going to use it. Now, a little bit on knowledge and education. Professor Syed Muhammad Nakib Alatas and Professor Dr. Wan Muhammad Noor and Wan Daud made it clear that the process of acquisition knowledge alone is not education, unless the knowledge is required unless the knowledge that is required includes moral purpose that activates in the one who acquires, which is the adab or the right action upon the knowledge. And education is then is the right absorption of the adab in the self, the actualization of adab in the individual self, composing society as collective entity, reflects the condition of justice, and justice itself is a reflection of wisdom. So there is a clear distinction on what knowledge and what education is all about, as defined by Professor Syed Muhammad Nakib. Excuse me. We all know that the country put forward the national education philosophy sometime in 1998, very much championed by Tan Sri Dr. Wan Zahid. And we have got these two major definitions according to the philosophy. What is education? Education in Malaysia is an ongoing effort towards further developing the potential of individuals in a holistic and integrated manner, so as to produce individuals who are intellectually, spiritually, emotionally, and physically balanced and harmonious, based on a firm belief in and devotion to God. And the purpose is that we should be able to produce people or citizens who are knowledgeable and competent, who possess high moral standards, responsible, capable of achieving high-level personal well-being, and contribute to the harmony and betterment of the family, the society, and the nation at large. And we are in the business of higher education. And I begin to wonder, what do we mean by the term higher in higher education? Because people talks a lot about education. There are actually some write-up that talks about higher education, and this Oxford tutorial book produced by Blackwell, David Paul Freeman is an editor. It was discussed that higher education is about development of the intellect, synthesis, analysis, rationalizing, and reasoning. It's about development of the individual's communication ability and expression. It's about preparing for lifelong learning in order to serve the society as a knowledgeable and educated citizen, back to the function of the vicegerent on earth. And it could be a starting point for a profession, but it is meant to produce a knowledgeable professional who thinks critically, about the practice of the profession, who understand the meaning of his profession in relation to the society. I think it's back closely to related to the argument posed by Said Nakib on the adab of knowledge into putting meaning to the society and the purpose of his being according to that profession. And John Henry Newman put up the idea of a university's education is about the role is to train minds, a cultivation of the mind, to inculcate the force, the steadiness, and the comprehensiveness and the versatility of intellect, to ensure its graduate possess a connected view or grasp of things that are intellectually methodological in pursuing intellectual excellence. Again, it's about developing the intellectual capability. The purpose here is not mere knowledge, the learning or acquirement, but rather is a thought or reason exercise upon the knowledge. That's a philosophy under this exercise of the university's the education in the higher education. Now, another book written by Paul Ashwin, he wrote that real knowledge is about a collective of knowledge rather than an isolated individual fact. Bodies of knowledge have a structure that has been constructed over centuries by many different people. The different aspect of this knowledge gain their meaning from their position in the structure of knowledge, again, meaning, and so cannot be considered as a standalone fact. So this means that what students gain from engaging with this knowledge are new ways of seeing and interacting with the world. Yeah, this means that students are fundamentally changed by their engagement with this knowledge rather than adding additional information to an already fully formed entity. And further on, Paul Ashwin stated that to help students to gain an understanding of knowledge that can change their sense of who they are, what the world is, and what they can do in the world. And the universities are established to look after knowledge for the society. So really, I think we have to go beyond just knowledge by instilling and shaping the human into becoming an intellectual and develop the spirit of philosophical thinking. And according to Syed Hussein Alatas in his book called Kita Dengan Islam, there are some criteria that must be inculcated into the curriculum when you want to induce the spirit of philosophical thinking into the student. First is the student must be trained to want to know the whole range of reasons that cause any issues at hand. In other words, not looking at the cause of the issue from one particular angle, but rather from a holistic perspective so that you can really deduce and came up with the right reasons why is it happening. And they must be trained to respect the scientific approach in discovering the truth. And they must be trained to use the power of intellect to the fullest, aware of the interdependent relationship between events, efforts, and questions of the society or nature, having the clarity of purpose, guided by beliefs and values, be aware of the importance of short and long-term thinking, and addressing the issue in holistic context, and above all, never give up. Now, these are some of the criteria that we need to instill into the students in order to push them into developing a higher order thinking, which is basically developing the intellect through philosophical thinking. Now, a book written by David Willits is actually a compilation of essays, stated that the role of a university education is more to speak of a university as a place for education than of an instruction. Education is a high word. It implies an action upon our mental nature and the formation of a character. James Campbell, an Australian academic, wrote a book on Humaniversity, remembering the moral soul of education, emphasizes that university has always been the base on the philosophy of education that is drawn from the understanding of the important role of social obligation guided by virtues. Now, if you look at the kind of argument that is being put up on all argument on higher education or universities education, again it goes back to my first slide that describe the development of a person whose duty is to become the vicegerent on earth, that is to prosper the earth, to develop and make a better future, to conserve the earth, he must have the ability of acquiring knowledge, must have the ability to acquire intellectual thinking, and above all, they make decisions. And all these decisions must be morally guided. It must have a moral obligation. It must have a moral duty. And that's what education is shaping a human. Basically, if you look at all the arguments that's put up by our philosophers, our thinkers, and the great academics of the world. Now, so this formed the background of the thinking when we shape up our formulation for our higher education approach to handle the era of IR 4.0. But we also look into what Klaus Schwab, who wrote the Fourth Industrial Revolution, actually wrote in his towards the end of his page of at the end of chapter of his book, and he wrote there that we can only meaningfully address the changes caused by the disruption driven by IR 4.0 if we were to mobilize a collective wisdom of our minds, hearts, and soul. To do so, he believed that we must adapt, shape, and harness the potential disruption by nurturing four types of intelligence. One is a contextual, which is the mind, that is how we understand and apply the knowledge. Two is emotional, that is the heart, how we process and integrate our thoughts and feelings and relate to ourselves, to one another. That's important. Third is inspired, which is the soul, how we use a sense of individual and shared purpose, trust, and other virtues to effect change and act towards the common good. And fourth is physical, the body, how we cultivate and maintain our personal health and well-being, and that of those around us to be in a position to apply the energy required for both individual and system transformation. So they basically, even Klaus Schwab realized that the tools, the technology, internet are merely tools, and tools are neutral. The main important issue is how do you going to use this tool? How are you going to basically develop and the tools to serve you? You can either use it for your purpose, or you can even abuse it and use it to some other purpose that may not be favorable to the duty as a vicegerent on earth. So these are very important elements that we must take into account if we were to shape the learning curriculum of the higher education system that eventually shape the university's students. Well, I do refer to the document produced by the Minister of Higher Education in 2018, as mentioned by Associate Professor Dr. Wan Zuhainis, that is framing Malaysian Higher Education 4.0, which is focusing on future-proof talents, producing future-proof talents. So here we go, the evolution of Education 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, and finally Education 4.0, which talks about promoting students' diversification of roles as curators of knowledge. Basically, they discover knowledge, and through their understanding, through their ability to connect, then they will produce new knowledge that enables them to work more efficiently, more effectively, but above all, with the moral obligation, moral duty of making the world a better place to live. They should be content producers, they are connection makers, the web as the open global curriculum, because a lot of content can be obtained from this web, and educators as the resource guide of making all these connections as a role of curator of knowledge. And if you look at the goals of this future-proof talents as set by the Ministry of Education, this is in the first chapter. At the conclusion part of the first chapter, they said the 4IR is built on the third industrial revolution, which converges virtual, physical, and biological spheres dominated by digital technology. MyHE has begun aligning to the needs of the 4IR through the development of the Malaysian Education Blueprint, Higher Education, and the initiative is in redesigning higher education. It's about redesigning higher education. Focus is also given to the aspect of producing holistic and balanced graduate. We have been arguing that from the very beginning. Humanistic competencies who can positively contribute to the nation building effort. Again, the duty of man is being addressed here, that is becoming the vicegerent, and what would be the purpose of higher education is to produce such an individual who are guided by knowledge, facts, and intellects, and also guided by moral obligation to become an effective nation builders and you as well as society. And when it talk about the future-proof skills, the document did identify 9 future-proof skills, and they talk about creativity and innovation. They talk about holistic, entrepreneurial, and balance. They talk about resilience, leadership, compassion and mindfulness, values and ethics, flexibility and adaptability, critical thinking and problem solving, and finally, ability to communicate and have the proficiency in communicating. So these are basically what is guiding the Malaysian higher education, Malaysian education blueprint, which then which were drawn into 10 shifts, and I'll be focusing a lot on shift number 1, 2, and 3 because this talks about what sort of outcome that is, or rather, what how could these 3 elements shape the curriculum that is required to address the era of IR 4.0. Okay, now shift 1, 2, and 3. Shift 1 talks about holistic, entrepreneurial, and balanced graduate. That it goes by saying that every graduate will have the relevant disciplinary knowledge and skill, which is the knowledge, ilmu, ethics and morality, which forms the akhlaq, as well as the appropriate behaviors, mindset, cultural, and civilizational literacy, adab, to advance them to a higher level of personal well-being. They will be global citizens, of course, with a strong Malaysian identity, ready and willing to contribute to the harmony and betterment of the family, society, nation, and global community. So we have been consistent about our goals in the kind of graduates that we want to produce through our higher education system. Now we need them to have excellent talent so that they are current. They should be able to benefit from conducive, supportive, and meritocratic environment, which better continuous professional development program that enable them to meet the changing responsibilities and expectation of the nation. And last, not last, but the third shift is about talking about we are producing people who are constantly learning. It doesn't mean that they graduate from the university means they are done working, but the intellectual mindset, the curiosity mindset that we induce in them, and the moral duty they have will create them into an individual who always find ways and means to make things better, to get more knowledge so that they can prosper the earth, prosper the society better. So they are basically not terminating when it comes to learning after the university, but rather they are being created into individuals who constantly want to make things better through knowledge and through intellectual capabilities. And that is when those are some of the fundamentals that we adopted in drawing out what we call Education 5.0 at UiTM. One may be asking, why do you call it 5.0 and not 4.0? Because we would like to embed the human-centered behavior of the society that balances the economic advancement that we can get out of this education agenda. That we should be able to resolve the social problems by a system that is highly integrated with the economy and as well as the capability of the human minds. So which is guided by values. So the Education 5.0 is what we call at UiTM to address our challenges in drawing up our learning curriculum for the university. Basically, it is a learning-centric ecosystem that is sustainable, balanced, and principle, driven by values, powered by intellect and afforded by new ubiquitous technologies. Okay, so Education 5.0 at UITM is not about smart technology, because that's merely a tool and the machine's capability to do what humans do, but rather it's about what humans can do well, rendered by smart technology and machine. It's basically a learning-centric ecosystem that is sustainable, balanced, as I've mentioned earlier, and what we imbue in the system is adab and amanah in learning. We are shifting the learning responsibilities to the student as merely receptors of knowledge and information, but to adopt or to develop the responsibility of learning, amanah in learning. It is only the student who can actually tell whether he is learning or not. Okay, and we would like to instill a lot of values and principle in this amanah, and also it's a human-driven approach rather than a technology-driven approach. So I keep on telling my students, I mentioned this many times, if you adopt the amanah in learning, then you shouldn't be copying in your examination, because if you copy in your examination, you will only get grades that indicate how well you copy. But rather, if you are being very truthful to yourself in any form of assessment, in any form of examination, you should be trying as hard as possible to make that as an indicator of how much you know, how much you are able to, how much you are able now compared to what you were before. And through those indicators, you will then guide yourself to assume what more need to be understood, what more need to be learned, and what more need to be asked. And of course, you have your lecturers, you have your friends to inquire and improve the situation. So really, we are talking about nurturing thinking learners. We are future focused individual. We are producing future focused individuals who are agile, have strong principles, and possess a creative and global mindset. And we inculcate learning by all parties. I mean, students is learning, the lecturers are learning. We also try to understand how the students understand us. We would like to know from which angle the student come from, what sort of pre-qualification level of knowledge he has, and which part of the program that is best coming into the university, so that he can really benefit from the system. We instill the love of learning among the community of learners, both the students and the lecturers in the university. So we mentioned this many times in propagating Education 5.0. What should be our biggest concern, both from among the lecturers and the student? That is a commitment to education. The development of intellect. You may add more. This is some of the items that I could think of. That is a commitment to learning knowledge, the strength of imagination by the learners, the strength of conceptualization, the strength of thinking, the strength of coordinating and curating, strength of communicating, strength of creating and making things happen. And these are part of the thing that we think intellectually the students should be able to be developed through our Education 5.0. Now, in addition to that, we emphasizes that the students must be instilled with the awareness of their moral duty. That is the ability to ground all the above activities with values, moral principle, and clarity of purpose, guided by the rules and principle of God, Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. Yeah, and because those two elements are very much required if they were to perform the duty of vicegerent on us, that is assuming responsibility of a learned or educated person with the intention of preserving, conserving the earth, and creating a better future. And what we believe that the university education must be, it should go beyond just knowledge. We must develop a resilient individual who are willing to take challenges. We believe that it must develop an agile individual who could adapt in situations, adapt in challenges, who have curious mind, who always challenge the norm, Innovative means able to provide new solution. They are able to navigate complexity. There is ability to simplify through effective thinking skills. Communication is very important because we don't limit communication as merely saying things, but rather the ability for the student to express their thoughts and construct their meaning, or even to defend their thoughts. Rationalizing is about the ability to make the right judgment, guided by the right values and reason. They should have an entrepreneurial mindset that is about owning the task and finding ways to make things happen, or to make it happen. And they must be guided by integrity, morality, and be purposeful. That is, when we said that you have to have integrity, you have to have the moral duty and purposeful, we're not talking about you just being able to display that, but perhaps more importantly, you must also have the courage to uphold these values and to lead with these values. So we're not talking about you as an individual, but then you as a person who wants to develop, or rather you who wants to propagate with your courage on these values. Yeah. So what it means is that we want to produce lifelong learners, not just graduates. Okay. It is about facing the world of works, not just producing workers. It is about unleashing the individual's potential, not just having that students access to higher education. It must be access with success. Yeah, and it is about challenging the status quo, not just conforming to whatever is it. This is what we meant by the graduates of higher education with higher order thinking. It is about nurturing curious mind and not just recipient of knowledge. It is about understanding and embracing high moral values and belief in its role in ensuring societal progress and sustainability. Being educated means you embrace in high moral values. If you are embracing low moral values, then you cannot term yourself as an educated person. Yeah. So this is the point that we want to put across. So the shift is really talking about from just knowing to doing and making, from just receiving instruction to assuming responsibilities, from teacher-centered to student-centered. Okay, these are some of the effort that we put in Education 5.0. From individuals' effort, we know that you can't do it on your own, but a collective effort is more effective. From just receiving knowledge to articulating the meaning of knowledge, from classroom learning to experiential learning, as mentioned earlier, from job seekers to opportunity, sorry for the spelling error there, opportunity creators, and from self-benefit to societal benefits. These are the kind of shift that we're looking for from our Education 5.0. So let's talk about the Education 5.0 structure in a little bit more detail here, okay? And we talk about nurturing a progressive thinker. So Education 5.0 seeks to nurture the progressive thinker who sees the larger picture and has solid vision of what he or she wants to achieve. He has to have the passion for learning new things, manages creativity and analytical balance, and move outside conventional thinking and take responsibility for his or her destiny. And the progressive thinker is mindful of his environment and his future. The progressive thinker is a person who loves and keeps learning, and he or she is essentially an agent of her own learning. Yeah, there are 5 essential core areas that we address in Education 5.0. That is learning that goes beyond earning just good grades on campus. Personalization and personalized learning experience is something that we emphasize in the curriculum. Design of space to learn and to create, that's another element that we put into the curriculum. Provision of challenging tasks and contents of the knowledge that is being shared with them. Inculcation of value-based learning culture. And the ultimate goal is the development of progressive thinkers who are agile, have strong principle, values, purpose, and possess a creative global mindset. Now, the shift on the role of students, we emphasize that students no longer wait for knowledge to be poured in them, but rather they are expected to provide input and give ideas to enhance their learning process. So we treat the student as partners, we treat students as beneficiaries of knowledge and also meaning of knowledge, and we also treat students as leaders, the person who leads their learning endeavor. We do talk about personalization for the learners, inducing the right conducive approach of learning to each individual. So we put effort on students learning through any path, through elective program. What would be the subject that excite them to basically complement that area of specialization. We talk about student can learn anywhere, any place, anytime, any context, with anyone or anybody. And also we talk about anyhow and any device. So these are basically some of the emphasis element that we put in the construction of our curriculum design for Education 5.0. So the Education 5.0 at UiTM is all about future-focused graduates who have great, strong principles and global mindset. We want the student to be inspired by their learning endeavor. We provide the conducive environment for personalized learning experience, a learning space and maker space through technology, challenging content, case-based studies, and of course, value-based and a learning culture. What we want is a student get inspired through their learning, and usually with the personalization of the learning program, the student can pace themselves. They can basically accommodate their interest in the subject that they learn, and personalize the way of learning. And therefore engaging ecosystem is important. Technologies is certainly going to be very helpful, and being clear of the purpose of the whole endeavor of learning is important. A positive culture of learning is induced in the students, saying that motivation and saying that you can do it all the time, and it's all about people-centered principles. Okay. Some of the foundation that supports the holistic education in higher education at Education 5.0 is about clarity of purpose. All the technology investment and decisions are directed towards executing the tasks that serve a clear purpose. In this case, building a learning-centered ecosystem. We build positive culture for collaboration and people-centered principle. We talk about enabling policies and guidelines to be in place to allow this to happen. Engaging ecosystem, that is an ecosystem that supports and engage learning. It must be smart, flexible, and allow fluid movement of learners in physical and virtual space. And also spaces should be designed to foster reflection, innovation, and collaboration. Yeah, and we talk about the appropriate emerging technologies that can assist these learning goals. There are 5 pillars that we put emphasis on to frame our Education 5.0. Of course, there are foundation that we built these pillars from. That is emerging technology, engaging ecosystem, clarity of purpose, people-centered principle, positive culture. But more importantly, we talk about coherent curriculum, coherent and relevant curriculum. Here, we talk about industry and community relevant, future-proof content, shared and distributed content, experts in faculties, and multidisciplinary elective, and also embedded into the program a multi and cross-disciplinary approach of designing the program. We talk about students' adaptive competencies. We focus on the students' social competencies, of course, their digital competencies, and we talk about their personal competence as an individual, and we talk about foundational and core subject knowledge needed for them to move on. And we talk about the 21st century competencies that must be embedded into the students. Secondly, talk about innovative delivery and assessment, and this is about effective and flexible technology. Learning on demand, which is providing the conducive learning approaches for each of the learners, and forging ahead with forward-thinking assessment. That's basically what we put under the pillar of innovative delivery and assessment. And the third pillar is about meaningful learning experience. We do push the idea of experience and interaction that mediate meaningful learning. So linking to the industries, linking to the society, Sulam is so important to allow the student to understand what are the meaning of all this knowledge and how it can be giving a meaningful learning experience to them by applying it to the community. We talk about student as agent of learning. We talk about inclusivity and respect on the students, curriculum relevance, and some of the intelligence quotient that must be embedded in their learning process, the IQ, the EQ, SQ, AQ, and also we talk about diversity and flexibility, which is basically to cater for differences in learners' needs and preferences. And this is also to respond to the requirements of numerous fields and academic programs, different form of flexibility required to understand the knowledge fully. We talk about transformative learning environment, which is achieved through learning online, learning from the experts, learning with and from peers, learning from the global platform, learning from the community or learning with the community, and learning at the workplace. So some of the effort that we put in deriving towards transformative learning environment would be these areas. And of course, above all, we talk about inspiring educators, educators who can actually, with their experience, with their knowledge, with their insights and foresight, could really inspire the student to push themselves forward into pursuing their learning endeavor. So at the end of the day, these are the kind of ecosystem, the kind of environment that we would like for the students to be under, and our curriculum is designed to incorporate these pillars in all of our learning program. So at the end of the day, our goals on our education system, particularly in ITM, these are some of the issues, some of the things you can add more, but these are some of the fundamentals that I think we are gunning for, that we would like to provide an education that makes a student a responsible citizen, an education that enables and empowers students to lead responsibilities, an education that makes students understand the complexity of the world, an education that enables students to navigate complexities and makes meaningful decisions, an education that prepares students to face the challenges and pressure of change, an education system that makes students understand, appreciate, and preserve the earth for future generations, especially as we embark on the SDGs, an educational that upholds ethics, values, appreciate collaboration, promotes mutual respect, negotiation, and act as a community. Rather than thinking about you as a person, you must think about your community, putting your community at the forefront. And this is where an educated person should indicate their worthy or their values in the community. Okay. And the framework that we use would be generally, it can be described as follows: a deep emphasis on values, principles, and purpose. We want to develop thinking capability, intellectuality, and wisdom among the students, encourage the discoveries of learners' talent and unleashing it. I always say to the student that whenever you get into the university, you must be able to basically identify your potential. And when you have identified the potential, you might want to shape that potential so that you can go out there and unleash that potential positively for the society and for yourself. Encourage learners to explore potential within them, as what I've just mentioned just now. And this could be achieved, and in fact, it has to be achieved through trans and multidisciplinary programs or subjects. And it should be experiential and reflection in nature when you go through the learning process. And coordination and contextualization knowledge, nurturing curiosity, and curating and curation should be the core business of developing that individual as a graduate. So I think, okay, I think I will stop there and wish to take this opportunity to thank you for the time spent on listening to my presentation. Thank you very much. Back to you, Prof.
Thank you very much, Prof. Muhammad Kamal. It's a very interesting talk. We can see how the perspective of Education 4.0 from UITM. Well, after hearing the second speakers on where I believe Prof. Kamal stressed back on the philosophy of learning and mankind, amanah, it recalled back our national education philosophy and how do we actually reflect the philosophy in our curriculums, and I believe the integrated curriculum is the key initiative that we should focus in higher ed. And talking about adab, not only among our students that they should cover adab and values, but I believe all of us, the professors, the lecturers in higher ed in Malaysia also have to think about it. And as a Murabi, this is where the concept of Murabi and democratization of higher education is another things that we can explore together in higher ed. And APM, Academy of Professor Malaysia, is a platform where we can actually explore the concepts of Murabi in the challenging situation facing the 4IR. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, now moving along to our third speaker. Please welcome Professor IRTS Dr. Zainuddin Abdul Manan, who will sharing with us on the topic of democratizing a resilient higher education. Without further ado, I will now hand over the floor to Prof. Zain Manan to deliver his talk.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh. Just checking the mic first. If everybody can hear me, Prof. Zaida,
Yeah,
are
Prof.
you able to
Yeah,
hear me?
I can hear the mic loud and
Okay.
clear.
Thank you. I'll start sharing my screen now.
Yeah.
But before that, I would like to thank the organizer for having me here, for inviting me, and the rest of my colleagues to share some thoughts on higher education at its most challenging time. By the way, is my screen visible to everybody now?
Okay, Prof, we waiting for your screen. Just technical.
Hang on. Again, okay.
Okay.
Right. And share. Okay.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah, I believe. Yeah, Prof. We can see your screen.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay. The topic I'm going to be sharing today is about democratizing resilient education, and this is very much along the line of ensuring inclusive and equitable quality education and to promote lifelong learning opportunities for all, as what everybody knows SDG 4 is all about. And I'm Zainuddin from UTM. We are also very familiar at this time, at this challenging time, that people are very much into e-commerce. Yeah, it has been, so to speak, democratized such that now anyone can sell anything. So if we were to have an equivalent concept of education being democratized, being made available, being made accessible to all from anywhere they are at any time and anything that they want to learn, then we would be able to imagine education being accessible to everyone across the world. And the mission to democratize e-commerce is something that is very big, as it is education, such that a giant company like Google wishes to expand partnership, and they have expanded partnership with a much smaller company like Shopify as part of the mission for them to democratize e-commerce. And today we talk in the context of making education accessible and allowing lifelong learning opportunities available to people around the world. That is the thing that I'm going to talk about, the mission to democratize. And I hasten to add, a resilient education, not just any type of education, but education that is fast. I call it fast. Fast means flexible, adaptable, and sustainable, so that we won't be able to be caught off guard by a mammoth or massive challenge that we are facing now and caught unprepared. So I'll be talking about democratizing higher education, the dream and the reality, what we dream about in Malaysia, and the reality that we are facing now. And I will talk about why education needs disruption, and go on to the mission that we have. Yeah, as educators, no one is actually excluded. It is an inclusive program or project, yeah, a mega project for everybody that are passionate educators. One of the model is Uberization model of education. I call it as a restaurant model, and some key takeaways. The vision of Malaysia, as many of us may be aware of, is that we wish to have 250,000 international students by 2025. That is what has been planned from the first the first time National Higher Education Blueprint was drafted in 2015. But until now, by 2020, we only have about 30% rise in international students. As of 2020, only about 30% rise in international students. And to make things worse, as we expected in 2021, there maybe not many are aware of the figures that we are facing now, the drastic and dramatic drop of international students by 80% in 2021, and we are more or less back to square one. This is not unexpected when a massive challenge like COVID-19 that has not happened even within 1 century, 100 years, has reared its heads for the first time. And the loss is about minus RM 7 billion for the nation when international students are not able to come to Malaysia due to strict border control. So, education, there are much things that we learn from the COVID-19 pandemic. It is that education needs disruption. I can give 5 reasons why I say that education needs disruption. I put the reason in the form of threats. Threats number 1, we may or may not be aware that students across the world, and this is an example in the country that is most advanced, in the US, where students are paying more and more. We would have expected that this issue may not be an issue in a country that has a long tradition of higher education and is the forefront of higher education, and knows about the students' grouses and have had many years of experience about managing higher education. But this is the stark reality that they are facing, and we are also facing, that students facing increasing debts. And the debts that the student is facing is reaching all-time high in the US, about 1.4 trillion. The highest and higher than credit card debts. Credit card debt, as we know, when people get into trouble, when people push their corner, they would have to resort to their credit cards. But the trouble and the problem, the challenge that students are facing is a lot higher than the credit card and car financing debt. The threat number 2, or reason number 2 why education needs to be disrupted, this we hear a lot, is because industry out there, clients out there do not think that universities are producing the type of students that they wish to have. So as a result, underemployment, not just in the US, is extremely common. In 2019 report, even before the pandemic, as many of 40% of college students working in jobs that don't actually require their degree or their qualification. So the question is, why do they learn in the first place, right? Why do they take the degree? Why do they study the degree in the first place? Imagine when the pandemic happens, when there are less jobs to go about, when there are less employment to offer to students, the situation is expected to get a lot worse, far worse than before the COVID-19. So we expected that, and this is also pre-COVID-19 threats to higher education, business as usual. If you maintain the status quo, it means that this is what we will expect. If we won't change, this is what we will expect. If we won't disrupt ourselves, we are going to expect worse. We have an envision 2025. Yeah, the vision of 2025 is 250,000 students we expect to come to Malaysia, yeah, to be the hub of higher education. But others have their vision 2025 as well. That anywhere, anyone in the world will be able to get the same advantages of the highest quality degree, among the highest quality degree, for just under 500 a year. Under 500, this is a subsidized fee in Malaysia. Yeah? Under $500 is a subsidized fee in Malaysia, even lower than that. So basically, this has been spoken about a lot and has materialized, has actually been a reality that is facing us. So what is the threats again? The threat is rising costs, and the threat number 3, digital disruption, has actually the potential to push higher education to the brink of extinction if we are not careful, if we won't change, if we don't disrupt ourselves. So then, I was talking about COVID-19, before COVID-19, right? Now, in 2020 and 2021, COVID-19 struck. Higher education is put at its most vulnerable position, yeah, as a result of the COVID-19. Most vulnerable means it is exposed, the weakest point of higher education is being exposed. For example, yeah, as we expected, because there are few, jobs are few and far between, more than 121,000 graduates, that is the census of 2020, now it is more, yeah, graduates struggle to find a job due to COVID-19. Yeah. And another recent news, relatively recent news, November 2020, it is said that a cited survey that job mismatch rate among Malaysian graduates more than double. It's not just increasing, but it's more than double the rate before. So according to a survey by the Ministry of Higher Education, about 30.6% of respondents for tertiary education were underemployed. Underemployed means they just grab a job. Yeah, the young graduates just grab a job, accepting a job that they are not, yeah, designed to go for. They are being overqualified, jobs that they are not trained to do, that they did not study for. So why in the first place did they study? And when they can get, when they try to get a job that's not meant for their qualification or for their disciplines. So it is not a wonder that in 2021, 80% drop in international students because of course, because of border closure, yeah, and as a result of disruption in higher education, as a result of disruption in digital disruption. There is yet another threat to higher education. It's like modern education is like being taken to the world's greatest restaurant and being forced to eat the menu. That's what Murugan meant, a famous, basically a famous quote from him. It's because many higher education institutions are actually clinging to the rigid, inflexible, conventional program structure that takes too long for people to complete. Now we are facing a pandemic. So many people are out of jobs. They need to be reskilled and get their job fast, or they need to just grab a job and reskill themselves to the service provider, not necessarily a higher education institution that could provide them the skills they need. You see, so if we only say to them, oh, sorry, because we have a 4-year program, and I'm sorry that we cannot offer you a 1-month program or even a few weeks program so that you can reskill yourself, you just have to settle with what we have and eat the menu. That is too sad and too bad for us in higher education, because actually half a billion, it's been said that at least half the global work population in the world risk losing their livelihood. It means that out there people are looking for opportunity to try to get themselves reskill and upskill and to get the best jobs possible. Now they're just grabbing a job to deliver food, deliver groceries, or to do whatever is necessary for them to have a livelihood. So essentially, while they are doing that, they have to study and reskill themselves and try to find a better job after a while. So this is the opportunity for many service providers. Is higher education is not looking towards it. So it's too bad for higher education if we still think that we have to stick to or cling to the education and curriculum that we have now. Because this, as you are seeing in the screen, will be the biggest disruption in higher education. If previously people get a college degree to get a job, now, most people, at least half the global workforce, are going to get a job and reskill themselves and get a better job as they go along. So while they're doing the job, while they get any types of employment, they are going to improve themselves, they're going to study and try to get a education provider that can provide them the job that they want so that they can study in a self-paced manner from anywhere, at any time, in the most flexible way they can, while they are working in a job. They have to reskill themselves. So essentially, in a nutshell, rising costs, skills gap, disrupted livelihood, and flexible learning results in the rise of working learners and pushes the traditional college degree or have the potential to push traditional college degree to the brink of extinction. To us, to me in particular, this is a clarion call. This is the burning platform. When you see a burning platform and you're standing on the burning platform, there's nothing else you can do but to jump. To jump means there is the urgency in this situation for us to change or to disrupt ourselves, or else we will be pushed like a dodo to the extinction. There is yet another threat, as you've seen in the screen. The silo structure curbs adaptability, innovative growth. As Dhananjay Nanda said, these are one of the things that actually I find interesting to my listening to many videos about the threat to higher education. We have taught educated people in the same way for hundreds of years and built facilities that cater for dedicated faculties along functional lines and disciplines and are not adaptable to changing circumstances. Sounds familiar to everybody? Yes, we have done that. And we refuse to change. We insist on this is the best. Even when there is a bomb being dropped in our vicinity, that we still think that the functional lines and the dedicated disciplines is the one that we have to strive for and the one that we have to protect. Because, as we are seeing before our eyes, demand for certain disciplines are going to decline. Even many engineering disciplines, the enrollments are decreasing by the day, if not by the months. By the months, if not by the day, while others, especially relates to digitalization, Internet of Things, artificial intelligence are increasing. It is very important in that case for higher education to be more flexible, to be more forthcoming and adaptable in the way they deploy resources, or again, we are going to be wiped out of extinction. So there's the desperate needs. If I were to summarize, COVID-19 revealed the vulnerabilities of traditional higher education. First is higher education cost is rising. As COVID-19 comes, it makes our higher education costlier. because we still have to run our buses. We still have to maintain our hostels. We still have to have some form of operations with a big fixed assets. They are less scalable. We cannot adapt readily. We still have to pay. If you don't believe me, you see students complaining out there. Why are they paying the same fee, for having to study online, for not using the buses, for not using the facilities on campus? They have the right to complain. They have the basis for complaining. Is because higher education costs are rising. When there are less fee, it means that you have to maintain more. You have less income. When you have less income, you have to you have a narrower budget. You have to have a higher cost to maintain without much income, with a lot less income. So rising higher education cost is made worse during the COVID-19 pandemic because of the non-scalability of higher education. So the second one, higher education is not producing what industry needs, the skills mismatch. And the third one is digitalization widen the access to education. And I hasten to add, for some, we also have seen or witnessed the dark side, the untold side of higher education. Even though people say that higher education tends to be democratized, access to people across the world tends to be widened with digitalization, it is actually for those who can afford to have internet access. In one statistics I see, only 30% of the world's 7 billion population have good internet access. The other 70% doesn't have good internet access. So this is a facade. This is the side that digitalization is not catering for, and it only materialized surface during the COVID-19 pandemic, where we see that many students, especially students below 40, the B40 students, as we know it, have difficulties, struggle to have access to education. In one BBC news, I see people in the subcontinent of India, in particular, not just in Sabah or Sarawak, that has to study below under the tree. There are many people actually are doing the same, going to the hills, going to the some other places that need to have the internet access. E-commerce may be better, may be okay, because you can do the e-commerce by your mobile phone. But for higher education, so education providers, there are a lot intense requirement for digital learning. Number 4, the threat is rigid, inflexible traditional program structure that is not scalable, is not flexible, is not allowable for those who wants to learn at any time in their self-paced, and not for the whole 4 years, but only for a few months or a few weeks, so that they can reskill and get a certificate, get a better job. And finally, the silo structure that curbs adaptability and innovative growth. These are the 5 reasons higher education needs to be disrupted. These are desperate need. So we have a desperate need to democratize not just higher education, but democratize a resilient. Resilient means, again, flexible, adaptable, and sustainable higher education. So Uberization of SDG 4 mission, the restaurant model. I picked the restaurant model. I do not want to pick the airline model or hotel model because, for obvious reasons, health, food, and education are the 3 things that can survive through. Even though higher education are more resistant to change, but the food, as you can see, now we are very well versed with Grab food. We are very well familiar with ordering food from our handphone every day. In fact, a few times a day. The Uberized restaurant model is one model that I would like to compare with. Before I go to the Uberized restaurant model, let me explain what I meant by Uberization. Uberization is actually leveraging. Leveraging means trying to get the most out of available resources through partnership. So partnership plays a great role here, a very significant role here. When we talk about only 30% people have internet access as compared to 70%, the rest of 70% doesn't have good internet access across the world. Basically, smart partnership will come to the fore, and it will rise above the challenges to maximize the impact and minimize cost and risk. We need to scale our higher education so that we would be more adaptable, more resilient, and more sustainable, so it won't be as costly, and we can offer education at a much affordable and much accessible rate or fee to those who needs them. I take an example that I use quite often. People in the UTM may be familiar with this. So very good for me, because when people can remember things, it is better for you, not just the students, but the staff and our colleagues as well. I call it JBJ Soul Kitchen franchise. What I like about this model is actually it has a great purpose, and the purpose resonates with our purpose in the university. JBJ is John Bon Jovi, who was a social entrepreneur, rock star come social entrepreneur, who aspired to build better lives for the homeless, and help not just the homeless but also the students who are in desperate needs in desperate need for assistance. So what he did was to design a business model whereby it has these two impactful outcomes to build better lives for the homeless and the disadvantaged students. So what he did was he designed a chain of restaurants that offer healthy food, good food, very high quality food to the homeless and students in particular who will eat for free, or some of them who will pay what they can. Yeah? But the thing is, the business model is they have to basically volunteer as the chef or as the restaurant workers. The return is being what they eat in the restaurant. So basically, being the chef or the people or the workers who actually live the purpose of this company, the purpose of this business, they work very hard, they live the mission, the core values of the company, they actually deliver the best quality service for the company. And they were trained, very well. They were trained to be great cook, great chefs, for the company. The company also have an efficient delivery system that is less dependent, not too dependent on people. And the fifth thing they do is actually they continuously improve through the great people there. They study the analytics, the data analytics of the restaurant, such that they will be able to improve from deep analytics, from the customer feedbacks, the customer complaints, and have a very good quality control system. So these are the 5 things that they do. Impactful outcome, they have great recipe and model, and above all, they have great people, efficient delivery system, and continuous improvement program and process. We know that many restaurants that Uberizing their services across the world. For example, Kentucky, Starbucks, have survived over the years. And in fact, during the pandemic, they do better. They do better than many other industries because they can actually scale themselves. They can actually deliver their food, deliver the needs through Grab Food and so on. So this is a model that can be extended to education. How can they be extended to democratize education? Maybe many of you not familiar with this might be curious. So the big breakthroughs happen when what is suddenly possible meets what is desperately needed. I've talked about what was desperately needed. We need to hire educators needs to change ourselves. Yeah, we desperately need to do that. So what is suddenly possible? This is the mission that we must actually drive, mission democratizing resilient education. So how do we democratize resilient education? Sorry, the slides come again. So the first one I would like to focus on is actually the people themselves. The people or the educators, the future-ready talents, yeah, within the university, as we call it, as the future-ready talents, who will drive the resilient education. From the franchise or democratized coffee program, yeah, Howard Schultz, the chairman and the visionary of Starbucks, says that we build the Starbucks brand first with our people, not with the consumers, because we believe the best way to meet and exceed the expectation of our customers was to hire and train great people and we invested tremendously in our employees. So I agree with him completely. The first person, the first parties that you have to engage with and you have to train, you have to take care of is actually our educators themselves. Or in the context of analogy that I have used, the restaurant model is the great chef. They must be given the right purpose. They must be trained with the right purpose. You don't need many of them actually, because when you are democratizing, Uberizing your education, you need partners, you need systems and technology, and you do not need facilities elsewhere worldwide, globally. So they have to be core value driven, they have to be resilient, they have to live the purpose, they have to be agile, they have to be trained and competent, especially digitally competent. So what are the desperate needs again? Once we take care of the people and we have to put in them the purpose of inclusive education. Who are the people impacted most? Who are the people who are going to be impacted by our democratized education? So the parties to be impacted the most is not just the fresh students, by the way. We have talked a lot about not many students coming to Malaysia. By this 250,000 targets of international students, we are talking about fresh students. Fresh students means fresh out of high school. But if we were to compare the number of fresh students and the number of people who needs jobs, who needs immediate education, who needs to be immediately reskilled, the number is far bigger than the number of fresh students. You're talking about, if I were to exaggerate a bit, 250,000 to perhaps 2.5 million potential learners that we can outreach out there in the market with our education in the context of what I'm speaking is from UTM. So we need to cater for inclusive education, the fresh and the working, personalized learners, working learners or lifelong ubiquitous learners. Ubiquitous learners means anybody who wants to learn anything from anywhere they are at any time they wish. So they are self-paced learners, basically. These are the significantly more the bottom of the iceberg learners that we have to cater for, and that we have ignored. And if we were to cater for this kind of for such inclusive education, we need to have a completely different type of education model, the Uberized education. What is the Uberized education? I put special attention to the partnership for the goals, or the need for us to formulate a partnership through transnational education, because many people out there, 70% of the world population doesn't have access to internet. So the thing about even about the talks about education and digitalization can access everybody anywhere, anytime is actually half truth. To me, it's half truth, because the significant number of people may not be able to access education. For that reason, if we could Uberize means we could leverage through smart partnership with institutions. For example, we have several institutions in Sudan. We have institutions in Nigeria, for example. We have alumni connection in somewhere in the remote parts of Indonesia, Makassar, for example. Yeah, we can Uberize the resources. We have partners over there. We can actually have a center for learning over there on education, and Uberize our resources, leverage on the TNE partnership for program certification and mutual recognition. Certification and mutual recognition is vital because the local condition is different. The local condition for learning, the local accreditation process is different. So basically, we need to have great partnership with many institutions. The most convenient one is our alumni network, to Uberize our resources with mutually agreeable understanding and mutually beneficial deal or agreement. And we need to make our program bite-sized microcredit. It has been spoken a lot, but what I need to add here is actually, even if we do micro-credential, we have to add value to the microcredits. For example, certification program that is important not for us only, but also for the local residents there. For example, if we were to take the restaurant model, for example, we are very familiar with certification of halal kan? Halal certification. For those of you out there may not be from Malaysia, halal certification is vital for Malaysia population. If you do not have that, you will be wiped out of competition. Don't ever want to have business in Malaysia. For that reason, Kentucky, for example, pay very, very strict attention to the halal certification program, which is a local certification, but halal industry is also a booming global industry, a $1 trillion industry, right? So you have to pay great attention to that, to the local situation where you can partner, have certification, and in the form of basically microcredits, certification program is great. Why I pay close attention to certification program? Because I have got many comments from colleagues that what about digital badges? What about this certification from Harvard or certification from MIT? That the program has been received certificate from MIT or Harvard, or digital badges program. Okay, you bring the MIT or you bring the Harvard degree to the locals. What they need now is skill. Many of the program, for example, in chemical engineering, if you learn about thermodynamics, if you learn about transport phenomena, they are just too theoretical for us. For example, maybe not MIT, but if you get digital badges for that and not get, for example, certification like health and safety, officer, for example, industry will say that basically there is a mismatch. We don't need the skill. MIT is also facing the same in the US. Skills mismatch, skills gap, up to 40% skills mismatch. So why do you bring the MIT degree without having a localized certification, the needs of the industry, of the local? These are the things that to us very, very vital in making sure that the program is flexible, stackable, Uberized, and actually with added value that fits the needs of industry. Bite size means they can actually be stacked. They can take bite size, upskill themselves, and be stacked until they get a degree, if they ever need a degree. For all I know, that many people in the industry, if they have worked for a certain time and they have a certain qualification and certification, they don't need anymore a degree. Why do they will always say, why do they need to spend 4 years when they already have a certification program? An example of this is certification or master program or certification, where we go extra miles. I'm telling you, we spend years and years to get this program certified as registered electrical energy manager, not just master in energy management. It may not be something that industry really needs, but when they see it is a registered electrical energy manager certified by Suruhanjaya Tenaga, which is a local certification, they say that basically Suruhanjaya Tenaga has not enough registered electrical engineer, not enough by how many, not enough by thousands maybe. Yeah, so we need you immediately, no need for interview. As a result, this kind of program have 100% employability all the time for your information. And there are other programs like this, collaboration with, for example, CIDB, where they have a certified MyCRES, for example, and a certification program that they develop, our colleagues in civil engineering, with interactive learning module and so on and so forth, that is awarded by CIDB in terms of the grant. Okay, so those are about the stackable, flexible program and Uberized program. Remember that if we want to export our program overseas, we must also think about how we can collaborate with the local institutions so that they can actually outreach people who do not have enough access to internet, where there are so many people actually in that situation. So the myth, half-told story about education can reach people across the world with technology is actually a half-truth. All right, after we have designed our recipe, remember the recipe, we need to think about our delivery system. Delivery, again, through partnership, I've mentioned about partnership that will make a remote learning experience effective. Sometimes we are thinking about, okay, for students who are actually not really going for livelihood because they are fresh students, they are not just talking about livelihood, getting themselves a job. They are talking about how they be life ready. Being life ready first is most important for them. How they build the community, how they contribute to the community, how they can be a responsible global citizen, for example. They need to have some life experiences, okay? To this we say partnership for the goals is vital. Partnership for the goals. You may not be able to have your students from, for example, Sudan coming to Malaysia, but because of their restrictions, what they can have, perhaps we can have them. We can have our students coming to them if we are more flexible than them, or we can have some other students from our alumni from the states of Africa, for example, coming closer to people in Sudan, for example. So in the vicinity, they can have exchange programs, or they can have online programs, but through centers that they have within Sudan itself, because the student may not be able to have access to internet. So technology driven, yes, but also coupled with partnership for the goals. Partnership through transnational education. So it is a hybrid. It is a hybrid. For the same reason, when you need to use in engineering education, it's been disrupted so much such that people say, how are you going to run an engineering program without you having people access to the lab? So here again, impactful remote learning experience is vital through partnership. Through partnership means you have a learning center, learning institution in the student home country that you have an agreement with. How you go through the agreement, you know how to do it basically. Technology driven, yes, you can Uberize our online education, but you still need a lab. You use the lab in the Sudan University, for example, self-paced. Virtual labs is also a replacement, but you have to have still at the end of the day some physical labs, or you have to have an examination center for face-to-face examination if you need them. And the other thing we also have seen when I design learning program for people from industry, for working people, there are so many educators. We are not talking about people who are not educators, people who is experienced from industry, all of a sudden teaching online classes. We are talking about educators all of a sudden teaching online classes. If you deliver the online class, like for example MOOCs, you can guarantee one thing. I'm telling you, what can you guarantee? You can guarantee your MOOCs online will not be visited by people. You are expecting 100,000 visitors, maybe not even 10 visitors. So you have to build in a learning experience that will not just fill their mind. A mind is not something that you need to feel, needs feeling, it needs exciting. you need to excite the mind through what? Through active learning, which is a proven mode of learning. So adult learners is especially critical for you to excite their thinking, not just to try to fill their mind with technical jargons or technical contents of your education. We have tried from the very beginning of the pandemic. We were the first to conduct virtual learning workshop in Malaysia for professional courses, for professional certification courses. And as we go along, as the news from the very beginning, the professional courses was not enrolled by so many. But as the news travel, that our professional courses is exciting for people, the virtual learning is exciting, our conference is exciting, then it snowballs into more and more people. And now we have certification program, among the most successful certification program, virtual program that embeds active learning, a real active learning that excites adult learners. So MOOCs from edX or from wherever they come from the world, if they are talking about conceptual things and not engaging with active learning, with excitement, with virtual experience that could excite them during the lesson. So you will be sure, will be guaranteed of one thing, that you will not have so many. Even though you try to Uberize, or even though you have to try to have online education, that you expect so many people to come. So Uberize means you utilize the remote facility, infrastructure, remote exchange, and experience sharing to countries. So what about these 250,000 foreign students? 250 by 2025. If we rely on face-to-face inbound, we can guarantee one thing: we can guarantee drop maybe. But if we rely on what I've just said, Uberization of digital education, how about targeting 2.5 million subscribers to our learning on demand module? They have been talking about this. 100,000 student classroom. At Stanford, the machine learning classes. But actually, what is not being mentioned, that how many of these students actually stick to the very end. From one study, I have a statistics, only 5 to 6% of these 100 student classrooms stick to the very end and completed the courses. So the examples that has been taken is actually can be isolated example from 190 countries. So finally, the data-driven analytics to transform learning, precise data. Educators, as future-ready talents, must learn from the data analytics. This is what technology could do, and this is what we have to leverage on. Precise knowledge-driven, data-driven analytics that can collect every clicks, every pattern, every answers that student give, to know and give feedback to us. For example, how many students actually have followed the self-paced program, at their own time, and get question number 5 wrong. For example, 2,000 students get the question number, we're talking about massive classroom, 2,000 students get question number 5 wrong. If there are only 20 students who get question number 5 wrong, then it will not be so very dramatic for us to actually focus our attention on that particular concept, a theory. But if 2,000 students get that particular concept wrong, this is something that we have to improve in terms of teaching. So these are the examples of data analytics that we can use, utilize. Very important, very vital for us to improve our learning and stay ahead of the curve. And the last threat, we're talking about silo, threat number 5 to higher education, indulgence in red bloody ocean. I have to be very quick. So many institutions do not have any differentiation. For example, we are dependent upon the university ranking for benchmarking, universities for benchmark for excellence. But these are actually red ocean measures of excellence, where people create academic reputation, employer reputation. They are important, but they are red ocean, so we should not be only dependent upon them. So competition is actually through the academic reputation, through employability, which everybody is doing, through partnership with industry, everybody is actually doing. No institution is not doing partnership. It can be extremely costly. If we compete on these metrics, then we might be tired, we might be exhausting a lot of resources, but if we establish our own niche, set our own terms, monopolize our space and create our value, basically we can, we would not have even any competition. So basically we need not compete, we try to create. Of course, it will take time, but we have to search until we are successful. So how are we different? To be the leader and to make our competition irrelevant so that we can actually be globally prominent from our niche area. So, for example, the critical success factor about breakthrough research, innovation, multidisciplinary is one area where is proven 30 years old or decades of basically experiences, concept that innovation is not achieved by breaking through the boundaries of our existing technology, our existing discipline, but as the fusion of different types of technologies. So many important innovations, say for example, mechatronics is a fusion of technologies. So if we transfix or fixated by our own disciplines and not care about how to create and how to break the boundaries of our discipline and work together with other disciplines, then we might be left behind. And again, basically, bioinformatics arise from a fusion of technologies, biotechnology, information technology, and medical technology, which is in one engineering, basically, typically one engineering faculties. If I take the last few words about how is UT can be different is actually engineering and education, where Prof. Zaida, the chairperson, is hails from. When engineering merger with education, you can be a leader in democratizing engineering education and now digital engineering education. How we can make sure that, how we can ensure that essentially students can learn from a distance away using physical resources and online resources in a blended manner. This is basically a very challenging topic for us to study on, to realize and materialize. Let me show why we say that we can be a leader. If you want to dispute during the question and answer session, can dispute one of them. The 7 wonders of UTM engineering education, pioneering in Sulam, for example, leaders in Japanese-oriented engineering education, ASEAN leader in professional and continuing engineering education, and the biggest in Malaysia, perhaps one of the biggest in Asia, but less compared to NUS and NTU. Nanyang Technological University has 1,800 staff. We have 767. NUS has 900 staff. We thought we are the biggest in the world, but actually one of the biggest, one of the 5 biggest. But by ranking, we are one of the lowest of the biggest, far lower than the biggest, because those biggest engineering faculties are top 5 or top 10 in the world in terms of engineering. So what have they done wrong? They done right that we have done wrong. So basically, global top 50 best engineering in we managed to get global top 50 best engineering faculties and winners of Akademi Global Award in 2019, and winners of IFES Global Engineering Award, and lead Malaysia TNL in Research Excellence Consortium. This is Center for Engineering Education. So basically, key takeaways: confront the 5 threats to higher education, find opportunities in adversities and threats, and don't compete, create. The Uberization model basically is the way forward to democratize resilient engineering education. Thank you very much for your attention. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Roseanne, for addressing these interesting topics. It recalled me one headline that I read, I think, last month in the TikTok. It said that Food Panda riders for attending his online class between deliveries have received 250,000 views, and it shows the riders in Food Panda uniform can be seen kneeling at a bench listening to a lecture on his phone and taking notes while his motorcycle is parked behind him. And this is where the example of the struggles is real nowadays, and attending online class while working as a food panda deliveries is
Yep.
actually the ones that have been the effort that shown by our students. And this is where I believe the Uberizations of higher education is the way forward that we should think to break the concept of conventionals and traditionals university, so that we can reach more people around the world that enroll into our higher ed institutions. Just want to throw and explore ideas, might be in the way forwards, might be we can collaborate with the delivery food companies, how we can accommodate our students who join, might be Funda Food, Grab Foods as riders, at the same time attending online lectures. So this is, I believe, the concept of democratizing in the resilience of higher education is one of the important things that we should focus in higher eds. So I hope you all enjoyed this amazing presentation. Now, I would like to invite Professor Muhammad Kamal to join us back on the stage for question and answer sessions. And both speakers, I believe the combination of talk by Prof. Kamal and Prof. Zains is totally, if we merge it together, this is a way that we can actually enhance our higher education in the future. Okay, the first questions, I believe this question is for Prof. Kamal, or might be Prof. Zain also can chip in on to answers. Is there any specific policies in public universities that address the United Nations SDG, particularly Goal 10, reduce inequalities? I am more interested in policy for those from the disadvantaged background and disabilities and special need. I believe based on the experience of both of you, former Deputy Vice Chancellor for Academic and International, might be both of you, either one of you can share on is there any specific policies in public university that address the SDG? Okay, Prof, anyone can start? Yeah.
Okay, if I can respond first on this particular question. As far as I can speak on behalf of UITM. UITM is basically a comprehensive university, and we offer the whole range of program from pre-diploma right up to PhD. And there are reasons for that, why we embark on such a big range, because we are actually addressing the issue of inclusivity. We know our students are not, quote unquote, equally on the same platform, ready to pursue higher education. We have cases where students coming in from the rural areas, whose task whenever they get home from school is to help their parents to put food on the tables, and help their parents on in the workplace, as compared to some of the students who are coming from the T20, coming home from school, they attend tuition and then they go. So when they take examination, we know who will perform at least in that examination. But we do not say that examination alone is the only measure of students' capability. So for that reason, we do offer programs that allow opportunities for students who have basically did not have a very good grades in passing their MC SPM examination, and it acts as a bridge towards pursuing a higher level of a degree. So that's one area that how UITM addresses inclusivity in access to higher education, particularly for those who are at a disadvantaged background. So I mean that part I can share with you. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Kamal. Prof. Zain, if you want to chip in.
Yeah, kita juga we also have a measure, just like Prof. Parman mentioned, a measure for policy for student with disabilities. You can Google actually for UTM policies, very detailed policies for student with disabilities, yeah, to have access to education in UTM. Apart from B40 students, ya, yang mana di kementerian memang ada lah, yang dia apa ni IKASih semua ni adalah basically untuk allow, ya, ini bukan untuk disability saja, but actually student daripada B40 punya group lah, yang ada different, ya, basically challenges, yang mana allow them to have a different track untuk masuk ke university. So these are the two things that I can relate directly answering the question actually. Apakah di public, what are the policies that public universities have. These are the two policies: policies on disability, also policy on entry to higher institutions in Malaysia.
Thank you, Prof. Zain. Okay, so we go for the second questions in YouTube. Okay, what about the producers of crops, cultivators, farmers, breeders, material resources and commodities, and the suppliers and health, knowledge and technical service provider? Where do they come fit in these big pictures of talking about Malaysian higher education landscape and also the way forwards, Prof? Anyone?
Okay, that's a very good question on resource for knowledge. Yes, I do agree with you 100% on the need for the universities to be engaged with the farmers, the breeders, the materials, and commodities, and supplies of health and whatnot, to ensure there is a flow of knowledge to these individuals or to this group of people, so that it can be used to empower them to embark on a higher, more efficient technology-based business program. But remember, in cases like this, we usually need a platform to work on. I think the Ministry of Higher Education did provide a very good platform for the likes of Sulam, where students, while inevitably learning through experiences they have with the community, but it really gives us an opportunity to identify what are the issues that the communities are facing, so that we can come back and start redesigning our program to address the problems faced by the community. And I agree that the knowledge in the university must be made available to the community, to empower the community for the cause of betterment in terms of their economics or any purpose that they require. The mediators can come in many forms. In some cases, we work with agencies of other the government agencies, the likes of MTDC. They are basically some of these mediators that could that could do the translation. So, in other words, professors or knowledgeable individual in the university shouldn't be overly contented with their academic achievement alone that they portray in the form of their publications or high index journals. There must be a concerted attempt, there must be a concerted, structured approach in addressing the issues of translating the knowledge they have into the practice of the community, because that defines the purpose of the university and the way forward for improving growing nation. That would be my response, Prof.
Thank you, Prof. Kamal. Prof. Zain, you want to add, or I can move
Yeah.
to the next question?
Yeah, well, I because we have an outfit, because we have a center for learning in Pago, I've always tried to impress upon our colleagues over there that basically we need to take agriculture in Malaysia to be resilient and to take it to another level. For that reason, we are saying that basically, if our niche area is, we have to create a niche area in the area of Pago where the community depended upon agriculture. So we cannot just be any other institutions that have been involved in agriculture for such a long time and without adding value to the agriculture environment in Malaysia. So what I suggested for them is to develop what we call as RESA. RESA is resilient, RE, resilient, smart, sustainable agriculture program for the community over there. So basically, this is what we need to make, because we have actually programs like GIS. Yeah, we have program like computing. You can merge them together with technology and make it a resilient farming system, so that we can transform the agriculture community into something that is of a niche. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Zain. Okay. Next questions is I think is related to from Dr. Suhairi. Is integrate to listen on your articulations of 5 pillars. I believe this is on the 5 pillars from Prof. Zain. Can you elaborate more on inspired learning? If I perceive it well, most students inspired on grades from learning rather than learning itself.
Prof. Zain or
Prof. Zain, I think is it a 5 pillar? I believe on 5 pillars because Prof. Kamal
yeah.
also have
Prof. Kamal
another
got
5
Prof.
pillars.
Kamal.
So I
Yeah.
think Prof. Kamal can come.
Prof.
Okay,
Kamal.
thank you. Okay, a very very interesting question, because you know what, when we constructed our education 5.0, we did a survey from 2015 2018 among the students, and we were quite impressed with the kind of response that we get from the student. We wanted to say that students must be inspired in embarking on your learning endeavor. And so, what is it that that matters to you when it comes to learning in the university? So, students came up saying that we want to move from just content and grade-based learning to learning that gives us more meaning. And I was just kind of okay. So what kind of what do you mean when you say more meaning? I say okay. For example, these are some of the statements that they make. Yeah, meaningful learning to me is when learning activities relate with ICT because it gives me space to express my own ideas, to design my learning approaches, and I can create my learning out of this. That's one quote, one example of the response again. Another example is that meaningful is when I can gain from the intentionality and unintentionally learning, including from experience, observations, etc. In other words, when they embark on a project, they don't plan to understand that particular context, but suddenly they come across it and they try to make sense of it, and they begin to find the meaning behind that event against the theoretical knowledge that and put it against the theoretical knowledge that they were exposed to in the classroom, for example. That's another statement. Another statement is that meaningful when I acquire knowledge that I am most passionate about, something that is super personal, close to my heart, and will waste significant impact not only directly to me but also benefit my family and my friends. So in other words, they have got this quote unquote personal relationship between themselves and the educators, could it be the lecturers, who understood what are their priorities in their learning. And they want meaningful when there are affection, connectedness, and support. When the professors share the interests of the student, share the challenges the students are facing, and these are basically what constitute, among others. There are a lot more questions, a lot more responses. These are among the components that constitute the inspiration that makes the students wanting to learn just beyond getting grades and you know and covering the content. It is all about discovering. Oh, I discover something new. Oh, I discover my potential. Oh, I discover his attitude and his views and his thought. So when and I am totally amazed by the kind of maturity that my students are having when they express the meaning of learning. And this is basically what I think professors, lecturers must start to dwell upon, inspiring the student to pursue knowledge for their, for their discovery of what they can do. So maybe that could help to answer, Prof. I hope so.
Thank you. Thank you, Prof. Kamal. Yes, I totally agree. If we can create meaningful learning environments, then the grade will come later.
Yes, a
And the
consequence
students,
of it will be the grades. Yeah.
it will be the grades. Of course, every student, they want to have what I call it, good
Grades.
grades on their
Yeah.
performance. But then
Yeah.
when we put them in a meaningful learning environment, they will be passionate towards
Yeah.
their learning. Not only them, we
Yeah.
as a professor also have our own passions in delivering and sharing our knowledge. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Let us go to the last questions by Lilian Oladokon. May I know how the learning on demand can be achieved and how such an individual can be certified? I believe this one Prof. Zain can chip in to answer it. Okay, Prof. Most of your sharing session has been reflecting on the learning on demand. Prof. Zain.
Fortunately, the Malaysia Higher Education has actually changed a lot over the last few years, where it acknowledged and it actually recognized learning on demand modules, such that many private institutions scramble upon this opportunity. Unfortunately, we in the public universities is not as fast to grab this opportunity. So it means that basically it has been recognized by the Malaysia Higher Institution that learning on demand can be done. What it entails is actually you can unbundle your course. For example, there is one management course, you can unbundle to learning outcomes. There are 5 learning outcomes. Maybe one of the learning outcomes is very, very important for you to make it into a short course, a short form of course, and partner with Project Management Institute of Malaysia, for example, because they also offer this course and they are interested in partnering with you. So basically, learning outcomes number 1 is actually being done in collaboration with AHIPS, Azman Hashim International Business School, and Project Management Institute of Malaysia. And basically, if you, for example, complete it with Project Management Institute, where you are eligible to transfer the credit or be exempted from taking that with UTM, and you are down with only 4 learning outcomes. Basically, you can actually get that recognition, and basically MQA, Malaysia Qualification Agency, recognize that as long as you go through recognition by MQA as well. So this is a very brief explanation of how the learning on demand. How does it become learning on demand and not face-to-face? Basically, you can actually bundle that one learning outcomes into a video type of presentation that students can actually follow at their own pace. Yeah, as long as been audited and recognized and approved by the institution, quality control, as well as by MQA, then basically you are good to go. Yeah, on this learning on demand module. That is just one example. There have been many, and especially private institution. Last time I remember, there has been more than 1,000 learning on demand modules that has been done by private institutions in Malaysia. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Zain. I believe the concept of learning on demand is not new. Before this has been implemented through our credit transfer program or credit exemption program, but nowadays with the new initiative by MQA and the Ministry of Higher Education, Apple Q, this is one of how we would like to formalize the efforts where we will actually recognize more previous knowledge through the learning on demands by the students. Okay, thank you both of you, Prof. Muhammad Kamal and Prof. Zain, for answering those questions. I believe we have to stop now for Q&A. If it's still open for Q&A, of course, till night we will discuss a lot on this because it's a very interesting topic, I believe. And for the great presentations, and it was a pleasure to have both of you with us together. We would like to thank also again Associate Professor Dr. Wan Zuhani Saad for her insightful talk. Thank you both of you, and we will meet in the future in another webinars under Akademi Professor Malaysia. Okay, I would like to wrap up the presentations from all three speakers with spatial take-home message to all of us. Number one, we need to equip our graduates with future-proof skill set by harnessing their humanistic, technological, and data analytic competency in embracing the 4IR. Lifelong learning must be embraced by all students to reskilling and upskilling opportunity. Second, explore and apply an all-inclusive resilience and anti-fragile higher education models for the advancements and betterments of the experience of individuals. Higher education need to evolve in tandem with the 4 IRs in order to stay relevant and competitive. The next one, how Malaysian higher education respond towards pandemic COVID-19, adapt technology to maintain academic and operational continuity could be described as heroic. And it most certainly display a level of organizational agility that bursts traditional stereotype regarding educational organization abilities to change. And the purpose of educations to produce holistic graduates, the balance of graduate attributes, and remember our roles is the amanah that given by Allah to develop the human beings and the nations. Together, we must strive for the best, and Akademi of Professor Malaysia is always there to assist everybody's. So ladies and gentlemen, may I thank you very much for your active participation in this webinar. So this concludes the webinar, and thank you for all attending this webinar, and we hope you have learned and enjoyed this presentation. Take care, stay tuned to more program from Education and Human Development Cluster, Akademi of Professor Malaysia, and do like our YouTube and Facebook page under MyHE Education 4.0. Okay, let me end our webinar session with few words. The influence of a good university professors can never be erased. Therefore, we from Akademi of Professor Malaysia, we believe that we could make the world better. So thank you very much. Assalamualaikum. See you again in the next webinar series that will be organized again by Education and Human Development Cluster, Akademi of Professor Malaysia. Before we end our webinar, we will actually show you the APM videos, Akademi of Professor Malaysia videos. Remember, please join us as APM members. Together, we work towards the betterment of Malaysian. Wabillahi taufiq wa hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh.